Canton, Massachusetts was covered in snow on that freezing winter night, and most residents were staying indoors to keep warm. However, something felt wrong. Inside one small apartment, Sandra Burmore, a 23-year-old woman who was pregnant, had been actively preparing for what lay ahead. Her baby shower checklist sat on the table, and outfits meant for the celebration were still unopened in their packaging. Then, without warning, she stopped answering phone calls and failed to appear at work. Days passed and no one was able to contact her. When police arrived to perform a welfare check, they found the apartment silent. They knocked repeatedly but received no response. Once they forced their way inside, a horrific odor immediately filled the air. What they discovered within would leave investigators with more questions than answers and uncover a disturbing truth that no one had anticipated. Sandra Burmore was born on May 13, 1997 in the peaceful Massachusetts town of Stoneham. Her early years were shaped by hardships that forced her to mature faster than most children. Her mother, Denise, struggled with severe health issues throughout much of her life, creating significant financial pressure on the household. Sandra's father was absent and provided neither emotional nor financial support. As a result, Denise became Sandra's sole source of care. And despite the difficulties, Sandra was never truly on her own. Denise relied on her long-term partner and her own mother, Grace, to help raise her daughter. Grace especially was a steady presence throughout Sandra's life. She cared for Denise as her condition declined. In a home where survival took priority over stability. Through these experiences, Sandra learned resilience and responsibility at an early age. She also felt a strong pull toward public service driven by a deep admiration for authority figures, particularly police officers and members of the military. This admiration was not accidental. Many relatives on Sandra's mother's side had careers in law enforcement or military service, which naturally influenced her outlook. Sandra's interest in policing began when she was 8 years old after joining a program called Respect. The program focused on helping children build civic responsibility and communication skills, while fostering positive connections with law enforcement. It was during this time that Sandra's dream of becoming a police officer started to form. Determined to stay on that path, she joined the Police Explorers program at age 12. This hands-on program, which originated in the 1970s, introduced young participants to law enforcement by teaching safety procedures, emergency response, and police operations, and it ran from 2010 through 2016. Sandra committed herself fully to the program. She paid close attention during every lesson and worked tirelessly to sharpen her abilities. Friends and instructors praised her dedication and discipline, recognizing that this was more than just an extracurricular activity for her. It was the foundation of her future. However, life took an unexpected turn. Sandra was 19 when her mother Denise passed away, leaving her devastated. Her aunt also died around the same time. Although Denise's sister offered support, the losses were deeply painful. During this period of mourning, Sandra also lost her place in the police explorers program, placing her at a major turning point. The law enforcement career she had once envisioned appeared to slip further out of reach as she struggled to regain stability. After finishing high school, Sandra searched for a new path forward. She enrolled in college preparatory classes with plans to pursue a nursing degree. As she redirected her goals. Despite this shift, she never completely let go of her respect for police work and remained in contact with people from the Explorers program. Still, the challenges she had faced since childhood had shaped her in ways she had not fully understood. Losing her mother and growing up without a strong father figure left her seeking guidance and validation from older adults. This vulnerability would later play a critical role in her life in 2020 when she was attempting to start over. Sandra moved to Canton, a town in Norfolk County, Massachusetts with a population of roughly 25,000. The town attracted residents because of its reputation as a safe and family-oriented community. She found employment as a teacher's assistant at Sharon Public School, where she worked closely with students who had special needs. While this was not her ultimate career ambition, she viewed it as a stepping stone toward a better future. Having spent years caring for her mother, Sandra felt a strong calling to help others and hoped to find fulfillment in a role centered on service. Her co-workers described her as kind and sociable. At times, her emotional openness seemed excessive. She often shared personal information with people she barely knew, which made some uncomfortable. Even so, it was evident that she genuinely cared about her students and put great effort into her work despite her limited experience. Her warmth and eagerness to form connections made her well liked, but they also made her vulnerable to being taken advantage of as her trusting nature left her exposed. Sandra viewed her job at Sharon Public School as a brief pause on her journey toward something greater. She carried hopes and ambitions for a meaningful future. But her strong need for connection and her habit of trusting people without hesitation would eventually guide her toward a dangerous road with devastating consequences. Sandra Burmore first met Matthew Farwell in 2010. At the time, she was just 13 years old and eager to join the police explorers program, which had sparked her desire to become a police officer. Matthew, who was 27 years old and worked as a teacher in the program, quickly stepped into a mentor-like role in her life. In the beginning, their conversations focused only on program-related topics, but over time, the discussions expanded to include more personal subjects. When Sandra turned 15, Matthew began sending her private messages. These communications blurred the line between mentorship and something far more troubling, especially since Matthew was older and held a position of experience and authority. Matthew slowly established control over her by using subtle psychological manipulation that kept her emotionally dependent on him. What initially started as guidance soon escalated into abuse. As the years passed, their relationship became increasingly toxic. Matthew's influence over Sandra intensified as he inserted himself into every aspect of her life. He became extremely possessive, constantly wanting to know her whereabouts and demanding that she share personal details with him. His need for control continued to grow beyond what words could fully describe. Eventually, he began using technology to monitor her movements, making it even more difficult for her to maintain independence. As his jealousy intensified, so did his unpredictable mood swings. His once supportive tone quickly became aggressive and his words carried veiled threats. Whenever Sandra attempted to stand up for herself, she was unable to challenge him. He viewed any sign of resistance as an act of betrayal. Still, Sandra clung to the hope that things would improve. Even as the relationship continued to deteriorate, she tried to rationalize his behavior by convincing herself that he cared for her, holding on to the belief that the man who once seemed like her protector would not become her greatest fear. By early 2021, Sandra was preparing for a major transformation in her life. She was expecting a baby. Despite the hardships she had endured, she looked ahead with renewed hope and optimism. Her apartment quickly filled with baby supplies she had thoughtfully selected, from small outfits to necessary newborn items. Although her finances were limited, she was determined to celebrate her child's arrival. She carefully organized a baby shower, eager to share this important moment with close friends and family. Her excitement was unmistakable, and those around her could feel how deeply she wanted to become a mother. She even scheduled a newborn photography session to capture the earliest moments of her baby's life. However, beneath her outward happiness, she was experiencing intense emotional distress. Sandra remained under significant pressure due to her relationship with Matthew. He continued to be deeply involved in her life, but instead of offering support, he appeared to add more stress than comfort in the days leading up to the tragedy. Matthew's behavior grew increasingly unstable when he visited Sandra's apartment to assist her with baby preparations. During one visit, he asked to tour her home and requested both the apartment key and the door code, claiming he needed access in case of an emergency. While inside, he appeared unusually focused on her bedroom closet. Shortly after this visit, Sandra confided in a friend that Matthew had been acting oddly. She tried to justify his behavior by telling herself that he was anxious because this might be the last time she shared an honest opinion about something that concerned her. Concern began to spread at Sharon Public School when Sandra failed to report to work and did not answer her phone. Although a recent snowstorm had disrupted much of the city, her continued absence became alarming after several days of silence, prompting her co-workers to contact the police. Officers were dispatched to her apartment to perform a welfare check. Upon arrival, they rang the doorbell multiple times, but received no response. A strong odor coming from inside immediately raised concern. When they forced entry, they discovered Sandra hanging from a closet door by a belt. Her body showed evidence that she had been deceased for several days. At first glance, there appeared to be nothing unusual about the scene. The initial police report stated that there were no signs of a struggle. The furniture had not been disturbed and the apartment appeared to be in a state of general disarray consistent with how she normally lived. However, when Sandra's family later entered the apartment, they noticed details that did not seem right. A load of freshly washed but still damp laundry remained inside the washing machine, suggesting that she had been in the middle of her daily routine at the time of her death. On the table, unopened packages of recently delivered baby supplies sat untouched. One of the most unsettling discoveries was a broken necklace found near her body. Questions arose about what truly happened in Sandra's final moments, as her family stated that she wore the necklace constantly, even while sleeping or showering. This finding made suicide seem less likely because if she had not intentionally removed it, how did it end up broken at the scene? There were also troubling inconsistencies involving Sandra's phone. She was known to use it throughout the day and rarely power it off. Yet, records showed that it had been turned off an entire day before her death and was never turned back on. This behavior was inconsistent with her habits, leading her family to believe that someone else may have been involved. Sandra's family and friends demanded a more thorough investigation. And as additional details emerged, particularly regarding her troubled relationship with Matthew Farwell, authorities were forced to reconsider their initial conclusions. Concerns were raised about his actions in the days leading up to Sandra's death, including his insistence on gaining access to her apartment and his unusual conduct during his last visit. These inconsistencies between agencies prompted investigators to take a deeper look into what truly occurred inside Sandra's home. Sandra Burmore's last confirmed activities took place on the evening of February 1, 2021, when she returned home from work at approximately 5 p.m. Shortly afterward, she stepped outside briefly to retrieve a package of baby clothes she had ordered. Later, at exactly 5:46 p.m., surveillance cameras captured her outside again, brushing snow off her car. She then went back inside her apartment, marking the last time she was seen alive. Later that night, a familiar individual appeared on the building security footage, Matthew Farwell. Around 9:09 p.m., he was recorded entering the lobby and heading up to Sandra's floor. He remained inside her apartment for approximately 30 minutes. Before leaving, he stood out due to his heavy winter clothing and face covering, suggesting he was prepared for the cold. Though the way he concealed his identity appeared intentional. The following day, Sandra failed to appear at work and stopped responding to messages. Federal investigators quickly took interest in the circumstances surrounding her death and launched a comprehensive review of the case. Their primary concerns centered on the initial assessment of the crime scene, which they believed was overly shallow and failed to account for critical evidence. Soon, investigators uncovered findings that did not support The conclusion that Sandra had taken her own life. She had been actively preparing for her baby's arrival by ordering supplies, planning a baby shower, and scheduling professional maternity photographs. These actions indicated that she was looking ahead to the future, not preparing to end her life. When forensic specialists examined the injuries on her body, they did not align with what would typically be expected in a self-inflicted death, raising further doubts. A review of Matthew's phone records revealed deleted messages that depicted a disturbing history of prolonged abuse and manipulation. It was also confirmed that Sandra was pregnant with Matthew's child, which dramatically altered the direction of the investigation. At the time of her death, she was 3 months pregnant, adding further strain to an already volatile relationship. Matthew not only denied paternity but also reacted with hostility, applying emotional and physical pressure on Sandra because of the pregnancy. The situation escalated. Conflict intensified. Initially, Matthew attempted to distance himself and avoid discussions about the baby. But as time passed and he realized the potential consequences, he reinitiated contact with her. This sudden shift in behavior, reaching out after previously withdrawing, became another warning sign for investigators. Authorities also uncovered a critical detail. Matthew was married and had children. Sandra had always been aware of his family, but in late 2020, she learned that he and his wife were expecting their 3rd child. The news devastated her, and she confided in a friend about how deeply it affected her. In one message, she said she had considered telling Matthew's wife about their relationship, but she never followed through. When Sandra informed Matthew that she was pregnant, he reacted angrily. He questioned whether he was the father and made it clear that he wanted no involvement with the child. As tensions mounted, Matthew's behavior became increasingly unstable, and Sandra grew more anxious. She told those close to her that she felt overwhelmed by the pressure and threats she was experiencing. As investigators reviewed their messages, disturbing patterns emerged. Matthew frequently monitored her location, displayed extreme jealousy, and sent threatening messages. Matthew Farwell abused his position of authority to control Sandra and possibly other young women. What began as an investigation into one woman's death soon exposed a broader pattern of misconduct within the Police Explorers program, where Matthew served as a mentor. A review of the program's records uncovered numerous instances of inappropriate relationships between instructors and participants. Sandra had joined the program at age 13 and began a relationship with Matthew when she was only 15. This relationship was both ethically wrong and illegal due to the significant age difference. However, Sandra's case was not unique. A broader examination of the Police Explorers program revealed that since the 1970s, misconduct had repeatedly occurred without intervention. The program lacked sufficient oversight, allowing mentors to abuse their authority without consequences. Investigators discovered that other officers, including Matthew's brother, William Farwell, and their supervisor, Robert Dane, were also involved in misconduct. More than 200 cases of abuse, spanning over 2 decades, were uncovered, many of which had never been reported or properly investigated. Further investigation revealed that in January 2021, a police officer received a tip regarding possible misconduct by Matthew. Rather than filing an official report, the officer privately warned him, giving Matthew the opportunity to conceal evidence. Immediately afterward, Matthew began deleting messages and making efforts to regain Sandra's trust. Detectives believed these actions were intended to prevent her from speaking out. While the exact events inside Sandra's apartment that night remain unknown, forensic evidence allowed investigators to reconstruct a probable sequence of events. It was believed that tensions escalated when Sandra brought up her pregnancy again. She may have been seeking acknowledgement or support from Matthew, which could have posed serious consequences for him if exposed. The broken necklace found near her body suggested that a physical struggle had occurred. Investigators believed Matthew used force to restrain Sandra. Her phone was powered off shortly after his arrival, preventing her from calling for help. These findings shifted the case from a suspected suicide to a probable homicide. Matthew Farwell was arrested in 2024 in connection with Sandra's death, but the case also exposed significant systemic failures within regional law enforcement. The Police Explorers program was permanently shut down. Yet, the damage caused by years of unchecked abuse continued to affect countless lives. The case sparked widespread calls for reform, forcing authorities to reevaluate how mentorship programs involving minors were supervised. The investigation into Sandra's death concluded when Matthew Farwell was apprehended and formally charged in August 2024. Prosecutors presented extensive evidence linking him to the events of that night. This included recovered text messages demonstrating years of coercion and manipulation, surveillance footage placing him at Sandra's apartment shortly before she was last seen alive, and forensic findings indicating that her injuries were inconsistent with self-harm. Matthew faced multiple charges. In addition to Sandra's death, he was charged with several counts related to inappropriate sexual relationships with her while she was a minor. Case records showed that he had used his position in the Police Explorers program to groom and control her from a young age. These revelations dismantled his claims of innocence, which he continued to maintain even after his arrest, despite overwhelming evidence. Holding other individuals accountable proved far more difficult. Although investigators found evidence implicating Matthew's brother, William Farwell, and their supervisor, Robert Dane, in misconduct, neither was officially charged. As of early 2025, many believed the lack of additional prosecution stemmed from law enforcement agencies' reluctance to expose deeper institutional failures. During Matthew Farwell's trial, prosecutors argued that Sandra had been forcibly restrained and that her death was staged to appear as a suicide. Forensic experts testified that critical physical indicators such as specific eye hemorrhages and facial swelling were absent, supporting the conclusion that she had been suffocated before her body was placed in the closet. If convicted, Matthew could face the most severe punishment available, potentially including a life sentence. Sandra Burmore's case was not solely about the tragedy of one woman. It became a powerful symbol of systemic failure. Her story exposed serious flaws in how oversight within law enforcement mentorship programs was handled. If you found this case fascinating, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We post crime case videos every night. Until next time, stay sharp, stay vigilant.